Welcome, my Pontiac High School students, to today's lesson on conflict and cooperation between governments. Here we're really looking at how governments work together and sometimes don't work together that well. So let's look at relationships between local governments. Nearly every American lives in the jurisdiction of four different governments. We have our national government, our state government, our county government, and our municipal governments. Remember, municipalities can include cities, towns, and villages. And all these powers overlap. And these overlapping powers create both problems and opportunities down at the local level. Let's look first at the conflicts. One cause of conflict is when local communities want to attract businesses. They want to bring more people, more commerce, more industry into their city, town, or village or county. They attract these businesses by lowering their taxes. So they make it really appealing to these businesses to come in by saying, hey, come on, and we won't make you pay taxes for your first 5 years. But of course, this impacts the services that they're supposed to provide, because lower taxes means that they don't have the money to then pay to police, fire, schools, etc. Now, local communities also argue that zoning laws can impact each other. When one city is right next to another, but say one city wants to have all of their industry downwind from the people that live in that city, well, downwind for them is upwind for the next community. So you get into these conflicts in between local governments. But of course, they can cooperate as well. Many communities work together to provide and share services, which would simply be too expensive for any one community to afford. A big example of this are garbage dumps. We don't tend to have a garbage dump for every single city. A lot of garbage is collected in one city or 4 or 5 cities, and they all transport that garbage to a single dump location. This makes it more affordable for everybody. Sometimes with smaller communities, you see this with police forces and fire departments as well, that they might share a community fire department. Now, small municipalities, the small villages and townships, they tend to have to partner with county governments. So they go one step up above them to provide services because they simply can't afford to do it all themselves. Now, when we look at conflict and cooperation at the state versus local level, we see that really the states hold a trump card here. The states are the more powerful of the two, clearly more powerful. And they have a strong say in what local communities can do, what they can't do, basically how these municipalities and counties are governed. Few states offer something called home rule to some cities. And this really does allow the city to determine which system of government it uses. So you might have a mayor council version in one city, but then the next city over has a council manager, and then the next city over has I'm blanking on the other system right now. Is back in the, I'm going to do something that I can do as a teacher, and I can just go right here and back to my local government. And remember what that word was, commission plan. They have a commission plan in others. So that is something that is a bit, governments are able to do when the state allows for home rule. Now, most states don't do this. Most states just say everybody's going to have a mayor, everybody's going to have a city council, and that's how we do it in this state. Now, conflicts. Conflicts occur when municipalities and states disagree about the use of land within a city's boundaries. So let's say a city wants to attract a new source of revenue by allowing the opening of a hazardous waste dump. So we're going to have a hazardous waste dump in our city because the business that needs to dispose of this waste, they're going to pay a lot of money for it. This is an opportunity for us to earn some money. Well, the state might simply say, no, you're too close to our state drinking water supply, and that's just not cool. So we have those problems. The rights of city governments within their boundaries is different in every state. Some cities are allowed to have a lot of say, but some states, the city can be overruled. In fact, in most states, cities, any decision that they make can be overruled by their state government. Now, levels of cooperation. When local communities wish to take on a large project, they might turn to the state government for help. Okay, they want to build something big, a big recreational area or a big entertainment center. They might go to the state and say, hey, we want to take this on, but it's going to benefit the state as a whole. So why don't you chip in a little bit of money? Why don't you grant us some money so that we can do this? And sometimes states will. Also, states also help with law enforcement, education, and welfare. A big chunk of money for education and welfare does come from the state level. Local governments provide most of it, but the state does provide some as well. Law enforcement also helps out with county sheriff departments or state police, which of course can come in and support the local city governments. All right, local, state, and federal governments. So we've got the three big ones here. Money is the key to connecting local, state, and federal governments. Okay, it's all about where is money coming from and where is money going to. Larger governments collect more taxes, like the federal government. They will bring in more in tax revenue than the state of Michigan will. But they distribute the money to communities which need the money and programs to thrive. So it's sort of a situation of money redistribution. The federal government collects a lot of money, but they don't spend it all on big national projects. They redistribute a lot of that money back to the communities that they got it from. Where's the conflict here? Well, some wealthy communities don't like the fact that a lot of their tax dollars are going out and they don't get a lot of their tax dollars coming back. That is, wealthy states like, say, Massachusetts, a lot of their tax dollars get taxed to the federal government, and then the federal government gives that money to poor states like Mississippi and Alabama. This is a good national program. It makes sure that we don't have states where poverty becomes such an extreme problem that people are getting sick and dying and fleeing the state because it's so bad there. But at the same time, Massachusetts doesn't like that every dollar that they pay in taxes, they only get 81 cents back from the federal government, whereas Mississippi, for every dollar they spend in taxes, they get almost $2 back from the federal government. That's just how that works within our national system. Some communities don't like it so much. Some communities dislike how the federal government would like them to spend their money. That is, we talked before about the idea of block grants versus grants. A block grant could be spent however the local community wants, whereas a typical grant has to be spent in a certain way. So the federal government might say, hey, we're going to give you, state of Michigan, an extra $100 million this year, but you have to spend that on healthcare. Well, the state of Michigan might say, that's great, but we'd really like to move it to these other areas, but they can't. Cooperation. Some local problems can quickly become national problems. These are the big issues. Like more than a decade ago now, we had Hurricane Katrina come through. Hurricane Katrina did tremendous damage to Louisiana. And so much so that local problem became a national problem as people fled the city of New Orleans. The idea that we have this federalist system, we have a system of federalism, this allows all levels of government to help solve a problem. So we had New Orleans, which obviously was very much involved in the destruction of their own city. Louisiana, which helped out with the destruction of their largest city in the state. But of course, the United States as a whole also redirected a lot of tax dollars toward helping the city of New Orleans, because that's what we do for cities within our Federalist Union. We help each other out. Government can tackle small problems before they become too big is another one. If we have a forest fire, local government might not be able to put that fire out, but you get state and federal governments involved, and pretty soon we can put those fires out before they, destroy cities and neighborhoods. All right, so that was the entirety of today's lesson on conflict and cooperation between governments. I hope you learned something, and farewell.